We can make tables and chairs, teapots and cups, but we cannot make a single car, plane, tank, or tractor. These brutally honest words weren't spoken by a struggling modern leader, but by Mao Zedong, the founding father of the People's Republic of China. In the early 1950s, Mao openly described the harsh reality of his country's condition. After decades of civil war, invasion, and global conflict, China was left with almost no industrial foundation, a massive nation unable to produce the machinery that defined modern power. At that time, China's economy was in ruins. No factories, no industrial output, no valuable exports, nothing to build a strong nation upon. For Mao and the newly formed republic, this was unacceptable. So in 1955, in the historic city of Luoyang, Henan province, China launched a bold experiment, the opening of Tractor Factory No. 1, the country's very first agricultural machinery plant. Just 3 years later, in 1958, China produced its first domestically made tractor, named Dongfang Hong, meaning the East is red. The name itself carried a powerful message to the world. The East would rise, and it would rise as China. Next to the tractor factory, the nation built its first ball-bearing plant, a small but vital step toward industrial independence. Both factories were part of China's first five-year plan, 1953 to 1958, the foundation of the country's great industrial awakening. 70 years later, that awakening has turned China into the world's second most powerful economy, second only to the United States. It now hosts the largest industrial activity on the planet, earning its global nickname, the World's Factory. But this enormous factory isn't without cracks. Beneath the surface of its strength lie serious vulnerabilities. These weaknesses are known as industrial choke points, critical areas where China still depends heavily on foreign technology and expertise. Beijing is well aware of these limitations, and so is the West, which quietly benefits from them. For now, these choke points are what prevent China from achieving total economic, political, and military independence, a future that remains America's greatest nightmare. Can China truly close these industrial gaps, or are they simply too deep to fix? And more intriguingly, how does America, sometimes unknowingly, help China overcome them? That's what we'll explore in today's episode. A story that goes against the usual narrative, revealing a side of China rarely seen, its weaknesses. Stay till the end and share your thoughts below. In May last year, Chinese President Xi Jinping visited the historic Luoyang factory, now operated by the Luoyang Bearing Group, a state-owned industrial company specializing in ball bearings. For those unfamiliar, we'll soon explain what ball bearings are and why they matter so much. What's important now is why Xi chose this moment to visit. Standing before engineers and technicians, he declared, "We as Chinese have come a long way. In the past, we imported everything, from iron to matchsticks and soap, but today, we are the world's largest industrial nation with the most complete range of industrial sectors." He continued, "We have taken the right path. China must continue improving its manufacturing sector, remain self-reliant, and master core and key technologies." Xi's visit and his speech were deeply symbolic, and the timing was no coincidence. To understand why now, we need to understand how Xi Jinping thinks and how his entire governing system operates. That takes us back to the early 1950s. In 1953, Mao Zedong launched a massive campaign to replicate the Soviet model across China's political, military, and industrial systems. Mao was deeply impressed by the Soviet Union's achievements, so he sent Shi Jung-sun, a senior party member and revolutionary ally, to Moscow in the late 1950s. His mission: to study Soviet factories, learn their systems, and bring that knowledge home. At that time, as we mentioned before, China was just beginning to rise from the ashes. By the early 1950s, China had almost no industrial power of its own. And this is where another figure enters the story: Shi Jung-sun's son, born that very same year, Xi Jinping. When his father traveled to Moscow as one of Mao's trusted companions, young Xi was barely 6 years old. That unique mix, Mao Zedong's admiration for the Soviet system and his father's first-hand experience with it, left a deep mark on him. He grew up admiring Soviet discipline, values, and the idea of a strong, centralized state, all of which would later shape his worldview and political philosophy. But everything changed with the collapse of the Soviet Union. At that time, Xi Jinping was serving as president of the Central Party School, the elite academy that trains China's top political leaders. He studied the fall of the USSR as a warning, a lesson in how a superpower could crumble from within. When Xi became president in 2013, he did not yet believe that China could truly compete with the United States. Instead, he focused on understanding the Cold War, how the US defeated the Soviet Union in order to avoid meeting the same fate. Then came Donald Trump, and with him, a turning point in modern US-China relations. Trump's administration launched an all-out trade war against China. For Xi and his leadership circle, that was the moment of realization. China could no longer simply avoid a collapse. It had to prepare for a long-term Cold War of its own. And this time, the goal wasn't survival, it was victory. In 2020, Xi introduced a sweeping national strategy aimed at insulating China from external shocks, particularly from the United States. The plan prioritized domestic production, self-sufficiency, and exporting only the surplus. Why? Because Xi and his advisors were convinced that America would continue to dominate militarily and economically. So rather than risk open confrontation, China would seek to maintain a long-term strategic balance, what Mao once called strategic stasis. In this state, China could quietly strengthen itself while managing US pressure and gradually closing the gap. It was a clever strategy, one that guided nearly every policy that followed. Xi's administration began pushing China toward total self-reliance, not just in food or water, but across every industrial and technological frontier. That's why in May 2018, Xi gathered China's top scientists inside the Great Hall of the People in Beijing and delivered a powerful message. China must never again be forced to beg for technology from anyone. He emphasized that true national security could only come through technological independence, and that's exactly where the issue of industrial choke points begins. These choke points are the hidden weaknesses inside China's massive manufacturing empire, which spans more than 4 million factories. They appear as technological gaps, missing expertise, or reliance on foreign components. In 2018, the Science and Technology Daily, a state-run Chinese newspaper, published a groundbreaking series of 35 articles listing the country's most serious weaknesses in manufacturing. A former CIA linguist named Ben Murphy, then working at Georgetown University's Center for Security and Emerging Technology, came across the series and decided to translate it. Together with other analysts, they condensed those 35 areas into 14 key technologies, the most critical pain points troubling China's leadership. Their findings revealed 3 major problems. The most advanced technologies remain monopolized by American, European, and Japanese companies. Only a small number of Chinese firms are developing true alternatives. And most surprisingly, even state-owned enterprises still prefer to import foreign technology instead of adopting domestic versions. These factors combined make replacing imports with local substitutes extremely difficult. At the top of China's list of choke points, microchips and semiconductors, the lifeblood of the digital era. The United States has done everything possible to block China from producing or designing advanced chips domestically, though it's slowly losing that battle. Beyond semiconductors, many other essential materials form the foundation of modern industry. Carbon fiber, vital for aerospace, battery components used in electric vehicles, and of course, ball bearings, the very same technology mentioned earlier in our story. So what exactly are ball bearings and why do they matter so much?
Ball bearings, or spherical bearings, are precision-engineered components that reduce friction and control motion between parts inside a machine. They come in countless types and sizes, but the highest quality ones are crucial for industries like high-speed rail, electric vehicles, tunnel boring machines, wind turbines, drones, and even humanoid robots. The global ball bearing market is worth around $53 billion, and just 6 companies dominate over half of it. Sweden's SKF, Germany's Schaeffler, America's Timken, and Japan's NSK, NTN, and JTEKT. Meanwhile, despite being the largest consumer market for bearings in the world, China's domestic firms control only about 25% of it. China's bearing industry controls only a quarter of the global market, but here's the real problem. Nearly 80% of its output consists of low-grade standard bearings, while only about 20% are medium or high quality. A 2020 study from the Wuhan University of Science and Technology confirmed what many in the industry already knew. There remains a significant gap between Chinese manufacturers and their Swedish or Japanese rivals, particularly when it comes to microstructural precision and dimensional accuracy in advanced bearings. And that gap, it still exists today. In fact, as recently as 2024, China's Kaiwen Securities Group published a report that painted a similar picture. According to that report, most of China's bearing sector is still rooted in traditional designs. But that doesn't mean the Chinese are standing still. Far from it. On the outskirts of Hangzhou in eastern China, a group of engineers at a company called Deep Vision Technology has been quietly developing a remarkably smart solution, one that could finally help China close this decades-old industrial gap. Led by Wang Shui-lei, the founder of Deep Vision, the team is applying computer vision, a field of AI research that began back in the 1960s, to detect microscopic flaws in ball bearings. These defects can be as small as 2 micrometers, a size invisible to the naked eye. By combining AI-powered chips with advanced image processing, they can now inspect each bearing at a level of precision previously thought impossible. It's a breakthrough, especially considering that foreign companies have decades of experience in this field. But as Wang himself said, when it comes to modern AI tools, everyone starts from the same line. That single sentence captures China's new advantage. In the age of artificial intelligence, the playing field has been reset, and this gives China a genuine chance to catch up or even pull ahead in areas once dominated by the US, Europe, and Japan. And make no mistake, the 6 major global bearing giants are watching this very closely. Saratsune Kazama, Deputy General Manager of Bearing Product Design at Japan's NTN Corporation, the world's 4th largest bearing producer, recently told the Financial Times that Chinese companies are, quote, on par with global leaders in manufacturing technology. He added their weakness still lies in design expertise, and competitors are waiting to see how durable and reliable these new Chinese bearings will prove over time. And it's a fair point, because China only began producing advanced industrial products less than 2 decades ago. Quality, as always, takes time to prove. Yet the truth is China's progress has been methodical, systematic. Step by step, it's working to eliminate industrial choke points, and in some areas, it's already succeeded. Take high-end radio frequency components or operating systems, for example. In both fields, Huawei has achieved full self-sufficiency in just 6 years, despite facing one of the most severe sanctions campaigns in modern history, the kind of pressure that could have destroyed entire national companies elsewhere. China has also solved the choke point in lithium battery separators, a vital component without which no modern battery can function. Today, Chinese giant CATL, the world's largest battery maker, and BYD, a global electric vehicle powerhouse, dominate the international market. They've even taken the lead in LiDAR technology, the laser-based sensors that allow autonomous vehicles to see. Step by step, these companies are transforming areas once seen as impossible to conquer. So, does this mean China is close to eliminating all its choke points? The answer is both yes and no. Some weaknesses can be overcome quickly. Others, however, are far more complex. Take carbon fiber composite cascades used in aircraft engines. Their production is so technically demanding that one Japanese company, Nikiso Group, still controls 90% of the global market.
For over 40 years, China and others have tried to gain a foothold, and none have succeeded so far. The Japanese government knows exactly how valuable this technology is and how closely China is watching. That's why it's tightening security around it, protecting it from industrial espionage. But the story here isn't just about secrets or spying, it's about China's relentlessness. When Beijing identifies a choke point, it becomes an obsession, a long-term mission that won't stop until China achieves at least a workable level of self-sufficiency. And the results are beginning to show. In just 6 years, China has overcome bottlenecks that experts once said would take decades. In February 2025, President Xi met in Beijing with several of the country's most powerful business figures, including Ren Zhengfei, founder of Huawei, and Liang Wenfeng of DeepSeek AI, the company that stunned the world earlier this year. There, Ren, now 80 years old and once an engineer in China's People's Liberation Army, delivered a bold announcement. He told Xi that Huawei is now leading an alliance of more than 2,000 companies, all united under one goal: to achieve 70% self-sufficiency in China's semiconductor supply chain by 2028. And he wasn't exaggerating. Despite facing one of the harshest technological blockades in modern history, Huawei has made massive breakthroughs in semiconductor design and production, one of China's toughest choke points. The irony is striking. America's export controls, meant to cripple China's tech rise, have instead accelerated it. That's why in mid-July 2025, former US President Donald Trump quietly allowed NVIDIA, the world's largest AI chip designer, to resume selling certain technologies to China, including the H20 chip. Why the sudden change? Partly because NVIDIA has been lobbying hard not to lose access to the enormous Chinese market. But also because Huawei has become its most dangerous emerging rival, and the US doesn't want to give it even more reason to innovate independently. And of course, there's another factor. Trump wants China to resume exports of rare earth metals to the United States. All of these and more are part of the real calculation behind that decision. But here's the bigger picture. The NVIDIA example shows the only practical strategy left for the United States: to engage China just enough to slow down its complete technological independence. Because let's face it, the approach of sanctions and pressure hasn't worked. If anything, it has backfired spectacularly. Every restriction, every embargo, every export ban has only pushed China to innovate faster and become stronger. So what happens if the US changes tactics? If it opens its arms instead of tightening its grip? Would China stop? The answer, quite simply, is no, not at all. China has already crossed the point of no return. It now understands, deeply, that technological independence is not just an ambition, it's a matter of national survival. And ironically, the United States, through decades of pressure, helped create the very giant it now struggles to contain. Just think about it. In 2024, China spent $500 billion on research and development, making it the second largest R&D investor in the world, right behind the US. And the spending gap between them? Smaller than ever before. China's dependence on Western technology is shrinking, fast. And because of that, the world's biggest Western corporations are now on high alert. They've seen this movie before, and they know how it ends. China's no longer just the factory for cheap goods. It's becoming a factory of innovation. So I'll leave you with the question: could we ever see a Chinese-style industrial rise in the Arab world? Or are our priorities still elsewhere? Thank you for watching. I'll be waiting for your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And maybe share it with someone who'll find it valuable, too.